Rain slicked the alley like a mirror, reflecting the dim amber glow of a flickering streetlight. A tiny shape shivered in the corner, soaked and trembling, ears twitching at every distant footstep. Its fur was a matted gray, but it wasn't the rain that made it huddle so low. It was the fear, raw and palpable, radiating in silent pulses. Every time a stray cat hissed or leapt from the shadows, the little puppy flinched as if the world itself were a predator. Somehow, it had survived nights on cracked pavement, under the indifferent gaze of the city, yet it moved with a strange, tentative grace, padding softly like a cat would, curling its small body around a cracked cardboard box as if it were a throne. In that instant, I realized this wasn't just a homeless puppy. It carried the mannerisms of another world, a life learned from silent watchers with whiskers and claws. And in the moment I knelt down, rain soaking through my coat, it lifted its eyes to mine, two green-gold pools of bewilderment, loneliness, and a fragile, unspoken trust. Rain fell in sheets, drumming against the cracked pavement like a relentless drumbeat, a chorus of cold and gray that seemed to echo the puppy's small, desperate heartbeat. The alley reeked of wet cardboard, old garbage, and the faint metallic tang of forgotten water. A tiny shape pressed itself against the wall, fur matted and damp, ears twitching at every stray sound. The scuttle of rats, the flutter of wings, the soft pat of cat paws on the slick concrete. Its legs were thin, trembling beneath a body that had known too many nights without warmth, and its eyes, large and luminous, darted constantly, alert yet wary, a fragile spark of life against the indifferent city. Somehow, in a world designed for bigger creatures, it had survived. Somehow, it had learned to move silently, to crouch behind shadows, to curl into the corners where the garbage stank the least and the rain seeped the slowest. Watching it, one could see that it was not merely a dog, not merely a puppy. It was something in between, a creature raised by the city itself, learning the feline art of caution, the soft elegance of survival. The first few drops of rain had been timid, almost polite, tapping against its fur. By now, they fell like a curtain, soaking it through, leaving it shivering and small. Its body curled tightly around a soaked cardboard box, flattened and weak, trying to make a nest from nothing. Its nose, black and wet, twitched at the smell of damp earth, rot, and faint traces of leftover food. There was a quiet intelligence in the way it moved, a grace in each careful step, as though it had watched the neighborhood cats for months. How they slipped between dumpsters, how they avoided the towering humans and their loud, unpredictable movements. It padded softly, almost ceremoniously, tail tucked, ears alert, occasionally raising its head to peer at shadows that seemed to stretch and pulse like living things. Fear was constant, yet beneath it ran something stronger, a will to live, a stubborn insistence that maybe, just maybe, there was more than hunger and wetness ahead. A rustling sound made the puppy freeze, rigid as a statue, muscles coiled beneath its soaked fur. A black and white cat darted past, tail high, whiskers bristling, eyes locked on some invisible prey. The puppy flinched, pressed itself tighter against the wall, but did not move away. It had learned in the quiet and lonely nights that survival demanded patience, observation, and mimicry. Each twitch of ear, each tilt of head, each careful step mirrored the creatures that roamed the night with confidence it had yet to own. And yet, despite the feline lessons, there were moments when its puppy heart, soft and vulnerable, betrayed it. A soft yelp escaped when a trash can lid banged against the wall, and the tiny body quivered, trembling not just from cold, but from the weight of isolation. The alley seemed endless, stretching into shadows that smelled like fear and rain. Broken bottles glittered under the dim light of a single flickering street lamp, cutting harsh reflections into the puddles. The puppy's reflection stared back, distorted and elongated, eyes too wide, ears too alert, a tiny figure dwarfed by the harshness around it. It tilted its head, sniffed the air, and moved again, careful, measured, a hesitant rhythm learned from months of watching the quiet predators of the night. Hunger gnawed at its belly like a living thing, a hollow ache that made its ribs visible beneath the damp fur. But still it moved with patience, the soft pads of its paws muffled against the wet concrete. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city carried on, car horns, distant shouting, the low hum of human life oblivious to the struggles of the smallest inhabitant of this forgotten corner. Then came the sound it had been waiting for or dreading, the soft crunch of human feet, hesitant but persistent, approaching the alley. The puppy froze, nose twitching, eyes wide, muscles tight. It had learned that humans could bring warmth or danger, and the memory of both haunted every fiber of its being. A soft voice called from a distance, gentle, careful. Little one." The puppy's ears flicked, a low whine escaping its throat. It inched back, wet fur pressed against the damp brick, trembling not just from cold, but from the paradoxical hope that maybe, finally, someone had noticed it. The voice grew closer, slow footsteps crunching on gravel and broken glass, careful not to startle. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the puppy considered the possibility of trust. Its green-gold eyes met the approaching shadow of a figure in a raincoat, the light catching the wet sheen of fur, the quiver of its tail, the trembling of its small, soaked body. Something in the human stance, the tilt of their head, the soft, non-threatening voice, spoke to the instincts buried deep inside the puppy. It was an instinct it had borrowed from the cats, learned from nights of watching survival. Approach with caution, judge the intent, and if safe, allow the smallest inch of connection. It crept forward, pads wet and cold, shaking, until it was just a few feet away, eyes locked on the stranger, silent, trembling, a fragile pulse of life waiting for acknowledgement. The rain slowed to a drizzle, the clouds parting just enough for the streetlight to cast a warmer glow, illuminating the puppy's soaked fur and wide, watchful eyes. The human knelt slowly, careful, not reaching too fast, letting the puppy make the choice. Its small chest heaved with the effort of breathing in the cold, wet air. And then, in a motion so slight it might have been imagined, it inched forward, nose brushing against a gloved hand, testing the warmth, the safety, the possibility of rescue. A low whimper followed, not of fear, but of cautious hope, a sound almost swallowed by the drizzle. For a brief moment, the alley was quiet except for rain dripping from rooftops and the faint hum of the city. The puppy pressed closer, first sticking to gloved fingers, small body trembling against a stranger's warmth for the first time in what felt like forever. Its eyes closed briefly, trusting in the hand that offered safety, if only for this moment. And in that fragile pause, the puppy's world shifted. The shadows no longer seemed endless, the puddles no longer mirrors of fear, and the city, vast and uncaring, had shown a crack of kindness, a glimmer of the world it had never known it could belong to. The night would continue to fall, the rain would continue to soak, and the alley would still smell of decay and wet concrete. But for this small creature with fur matted and spirit weary, a seed had been planted. Trust, once impossible, had been nudged open. A world of warmth, food, and gentle hands waited somewhere beyond the alley. The first chapter of survival was ending, and a new story, one of hope and belonging, was just beginning. The city had quieted in a way that felt almost sacred, as if it had paused to watch this small, trembling life unfold. Rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, each drop pattering softly against the concrete and puddles that reflected dim street lights. The puppy's soaked fur clung to its tiny frame, but now, pressed against the warmth of a human hand, it felt something unfamiliar. Not just shelter from the storm, but the strange, dizzying pull of trust. Its nose twitched, sniffing the glove, the scent of soap, rain, and faint perfume, each new note a small puzzle to decode. The soft weight of the hand was steady, patient, and it did not force. It did not hurry. The human seemed to understand something primal, something delicate. For minutes, maybe hours in the puppy's mind, it simply allowed the presence. Eyes wide, green gold shimmering in the streetlight, it tilted its head, ears flicking, tail tucked but slowly quivering. The hand shifted, offering warmth beneath the belly, brushing the wet fur with a gentleness that felt impossibly foreign. Every instinct told it to retreat, to run into the alley's shadowed corners where the rats scuttled and the wind carried secrets. Yet something deeper, something small and desperate for comfort, drew it forward. It pressed a tentative paw against the hand, felt the steady pressure of a glove that did not pull away, and for the first time realized that not all humans were predators. The rain-slicked alley smelled of wet cardboard, asphalt, and a faint trace of flowers from a nearby window box, but the scent of warmth, safety, and possibility began to overlay it. The puppy inched forward again, the small pads of its feet slipping slightly in the puddles, and it let its head rest briefly against the human's palm. A soft sigh escaped, a sound barely more than a whisper, but heavy with relief, exhaustion, and a cautious curiosity. The human's voice, low and melodic, cooed something meaningless but comforting. "Hey, it's okay, you're safe now." The words were strange to the puppy's ears, but the tone was unmistakable, wrapping around its senses like a protective cloak. Food had not entered this puppy's world in days, maybe weeks, but hunger now mingled with something far more potent. The taste of possibility. The human reached into a satchel, retrieving a small, wet paper bag. The smell hit first. Stale bread, tiny bits of meat, a fragrance that made the puppy's belly rumble despite its fear. It crouched, ears flattened, eyes darting, still uncertain. But curiosity began to outweigh caution. One careful sniff, then another, until finally, tiny teeth nibbled at the morsel offered. Each bite was a revelation, a discovery that sustenance could exist alongside safety, that warmth could exist alongside the cold city. The hand never rushed, never forced. It simply rested near, a silent promise that it would wait. The puppy ate slowly, each chew a mixture of hunger, doubt, and trust being formed brick by brick. In between bites, it lifted its head, sniffed the air, then glanced at the human, green-gold eyes glistening in the dim light. It seemed to ask the unspoken question. "Will you stay?" The hand responded with a soft stroke along the head, brushing the wet, matted fur, letting the puppy feel the steady pulse of another life beside its own. That rhythm, slow and patient, was the first heartbeat of a bond being forged, fragile but alive. The drizzle had ceased now, leaving only dampness and a quiet sigh from the city. The puppy shifted, rolling onto its side to press against the warmth of the human's lap, muscles still tense but gradually relaxing. It had learned lessons in survival, how to hide, how to be silent, how to borrow feline agility to avoid the dangers of the streets. The puppy learned to rest without bracing, to trust the cadence of another heartbeat, to inhale the safety and warmth and exhale the anxiety and exhaustion of months on the street. Every new experience was a lesson in courage. The first brush with a soft blanket, the first tentative climb over a threshold, the first moment of being lifted without panic, all became markers in a gradual rewriting of instinct. Fear was not erased, but it was tempered, sculpted into awareness rather than paralysis. The puppy's body, once constantly coiled, now carried the soft swell of confidence beneath wet fur and trembling whiskers. Every blink, every tilt of the head, every flick of tail was a note in the symphony of adaptation, of survival transforming into life, of instinct harmonizing with care. By nightfall, the puppy rested curled in a corner of the room, blanket wrapped loosely around its body, paws twitching in dreams, where streets and alleys had transformed into safer paths, and the humans it had feared had become guardians. The human placed a hand lightly on its head, a gentle pressure, a final affirmation of the day's small triumphs. Eyes half closed, the puppy inhaled deeply, the rhythm of safety filling lungs that had known only fear. Trust had been offered, tentative and fragile, and it had been accepted, however slightly, however fleetingly. And as the light faded to shadows, as the city continued its distant hum, the tiny creature dreamed not of survival, but of belonging. The morning had begun like any other. Soft light spilling into the room, warm blankets piled around the small, trembling body. But something felt wrong. The puppy's breaths were shallow, chest heaving in uneven rhythm, paws tucked tightly beneath its soaked fur, as if the warmth surrounding it could not reach its trembling core. Its green-gold eyes, once wide with curiosity, flickered with confusion and fear. Hunger, play, and trust, all the small victories of the past days, were eclipsed by a sudden, inexplicable weakness. The human noticed immediately, crouching low beside the trembling form, voice urgent but gentle. "Hey, what's wrong, little one?" The puppy's ears flattened, tail tucked, instinct screaming retreat. Yet the warmth of the hand, the constancy of care, anchored it in place. The room smelled of blankets and faint soap, but now that comforting scent was overlaid with the sharp tang of panic. The puppy stumbled to its paws, wobbling legs uncertain, and fell back into the folds of the blanket. Its whines were soft at first, then urgent, echoing through the quiet room. The human scooped it up, chest heaving, heartbeat pounding in unison with the puppy's rapid pulse, and carried it to a soft, safe spot. Every instinct, the memory of alleys, of hunger, of rain-soaked nights, resurfaced, whispering warnings, igniting fear. And yet the warmth, patience, and gentle voice of the human cut through the instinctual panic, a fragile lifeline the puppy clung to, however shakily. A trip outside for fresh air revealed the true test. The puppy's legs trembled violently as it tried to walk, tail low, eyes wide with disbelief at the sudden loss of control over its own body. It barked once, high and thin, a sound of fear and frustration mingled with confusion. The human knelt, hands steady beneath its chest, speaking softly, offering gentle strokes and murmurs of reassurance. It's okay. I'm here. The puppy leaned into the touch, shivering violently, but the hand remained a constant grounding presence. Every small movement was a triumph. A paw placed, a tentative step forward, a deep inhale that seemed to draw courage from the steady heartbeat beside it. By evening, after a careful check, the puppy rested in the human's lap, small body finally slackening against the familiar warmth. Its fur was damp from earlier attempts to drink water, from struggles to move, from brief moments of panic, but there was a quiet acceptance beginning to take root. It had faced a sudden internal storm, a fracture in its body or spirit it had never known existed, and survived not alone, but in the company of unwavering care. Eyes half closed, tail flicking weakly, it felt something profound. Vulnerability could coexist with safety, fear could coexist with trust, and even in moments that mirrored its worst nights on the street, it could still cling to hope. That night, curled against the human's chest, the puppy's breathing steadied. The lesson had been harsh but invaluable. Life, even when softened by love, could still deliver storms. Yet within those storms, there was a new knowledge, a realization that hands could anchor, hearts could protect, and courage could grow slowly, one tremulous step at a time. The first real test of trust had been met, and though fear lingered, it no longer ruled. In the quiet, the tiny creature exhaled, allowing itself to dream once more, of warmth, of play, of belonging. Morning light spilled across the room in soft golden streams, warming the small, stretched-out body of the puppy. It yawned, tiny teeth flashing, and stretched its legs, tail wagging in slow, deliberate arcs. The blanket that had once felt alien now smelled like home, infused with warmth and safety, and the walls around it no longer whispered of shadows or fear. The human's presence was no longer a novelty or cautious curiosity. It was certainty, a constant heartbeat the puppy could lean against without hesitation. The green-gold eyes that had once scanned for danger now reflected contentment, playful mischief, and a slow, dawning confidence. Breakfast was no longer a battle between hunger and fear. The puppy leapt eagerly to the dish, small paws clattering across the floor, tail held high, body tense with excitement rather than caution. Each bite was savored, not just for sustenance but for the simple joy of life, of knowing it would not have to scavenge or hide ever again. The human watched, a quiet smile playing across their lips, stroking the soft, damp fur with affection, letting the puppy feel the constant rhythm of care. This was no longer survival. It was living, and the puppy was beginning to understand the difference. The afternoon brought play. A small plush toy became a fierce opponent, yet each pounce and tumble ended in laughter, small yips and wagging tails. The puppy rolled on the floor, legs flailing, ears twitching, and barked in glee, fully alive in a way it had never known in the alleys, the rain, or the lonely nights. Its paws left muddy prints on the carpet, a testament to freedom, exploration, and ownership of this safe, soft space. Even mistakes, a clumsy tumble, a slipped landing, were met with gentle encouragement, not threat. Slowly the puppy's body relaxed, muscles softening, paws pressing confidently into the floor, heart swelling with joy that was untainted by fear. Evening came with the city's distant hum and the quiet rustle of curtains in the gentle breeze. The puppy nestled in a pile of blankets on the couch, head resting against the human's chest, paws draped lazily over their lap. The hand brushed the ears, scratched behind the neck, and whispered soothing words. Every inch of the small matted body now radiated trust. Scars from hunger and cold, from nights on cracked pavement and the lessons learned from cats in the alley were still there, but they no longer defined its life. They were the outline of a story that had ended with safety and love. The puppy lifted its head for a brief glance toward the window, eyes catching the last golden rays of sunlight. The world outside still existed. Streets, cars, distant voices, but it no longer held the terror it once had. Instead, it held possibility. Possibility for walks, for discovery, for adventures where fear could be replaced by joy. The small body yawned, curling again into the warmth of the human's arms, tail brushing softly across the chest, a slow, rhythmic swish of contentment. As night fell, the room dimmed, blankets wrapped, paws tucked. The puppy finally exhaled deeply, a sign not just of sleep but of belonging. No alley, no shadow, no hunger could touch it now. The lessons of survival had transformed into the soft confidence of home, the warmth of trust, and the freedom of a life fully lived. Eyes closed, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm with another heartbeat. The puppy dreamed not of fear, not of hunger, but of love. A love that had finally found its mark, and a home that had finally found its heart.